Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna.
On the one hand, but on the other hand, so how do you balance the two? Lord Chaitanya, Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate, the most munificent Mahavadanyaya. And the other hand, Lord Nityananda is said to be more merciful than Lord Chaitanya. So what's the deal? Who is most merciful? How do we weigh the comparative mercy of the two lords? So I gave an answer, but said I would consult with Varsana Maharaj. And a lot has to do with the function. Lord Nityananda is the extension of Lord Chaitanya's mercy. So in one sense, their mercy is the same. He is the full embodiment of Lord Chaitanya's mercy. So their mercy is the same. On the other hand, their function, it's like the function of guru, because Lord Nityananda is the original guru, right? Lord Nityananda is the original guru, Adi Guru, Lord Nityananda. So who is more merciful? The representative of Krishna or Krishna? Well, they're equally merciful because one's carrying the mercy of the other. But it's said, for example, earlier before Jagai and Madhai were delivered, Jagai and Madhai, in the drunken state, they tried to approach Lord Chaitanya and to have some conversation with him, and he just avoided them. But Lord Nityananda delivered them. He went to he is the conduit or the deliverer of Lord Chaitanya's mercy. And in that way, he was more merciful. Because what I said was that this question was a disagreement between the two lords. When Jagai and Madhai were delivered, Lord Chaitanya was saying to Lord Nityananda, because of your mercy, they've been delivered, which is true. And Lord Nityananda said, no. I was just, the point person. You were the deliverer of these two. So they disagreed and back and forth. They were giving credit to one another. But the merciful nature of Lord Nityananda was that he extended his mercy to everybody. In Leela, of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was giving access to everyone to the holy name and to love of God. That was shown in his South India tour, for example, just passing along the road with his arms raised in the air, Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha, etc. That nice passage from Chaitanya Charitamrita. And people would see him in ecstasy, and they just seeing him in ecstasy, they would become filled with ecstasy, and they would start dancing and raising their arms, and he would embrace them. Oh, how wonderful. And they would chant and dance together, and they just wanted to travel with him. And he said, no, you go back to your village and instruct them as I have instructed you. And so this way, Sankirtan spread throughout South India by that method. So he was giving to everybody, but his principal and intimate associates were, the list is a very, very elevated persons. Ramananda Roy, Sarup Damodar, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the six Goswamis, the Maharaj Prataparudra, topmost persons in society. And on the other hand, Lord Nityananda, being in the mood of an avaduta, you know what an avaduta is? Like a madman. What's a madman? No consideration of social custom, conduct, how he was dressed, if he was dressed, just like a total societal, not giving any attention to any of that stuff. And as a result, he gave mercy to all kinds of people. And so the two lords were bearing the same amount of mercy, and they gave mercy in different ways to different persons. So one thing we can say, we don't get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya without the mercy of Lord Nityananda. We need the mercy of Lord Nityananda to get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. So better be careful when you make comparisons between two personalities such as this. We can say the fullness of Lord Nityananda's mercy comes from the fullness of Lord Chaitanya's mercy. And he freely distributed that fullness of his mercy so liberally that he's the most merciful. But we have to be careful because we don't want to offend Lord Chaitanya. Lord Nityananda may not like it. And then you may not get his mercy. Then you won't get Lord Chaitanya's mercy. So this evening, there's 2 chapters we're going to read. After the 2 lords meet, Nityananda, Lord Chaitanya has begun his Sankirtan pastimes at the house of Srivas, and he's in ecstasy, and they're in ecstasy with him, the residents of Navadvip, but he's feeling something. It's not the same without Lord Nityananda. Lord Nityananda feels that same feeling. He comes to Navadvip, the 2 lords meet. There's some nice section that we read. And when they meet, it's like a volcanic eruption, their ecstatic emotion. Let's hear. Chapter 4, Revelation of Nityananda's glories. As Vishvambar stood in front of Nityananda, Nityananda recognized his worshipable Lord. Nityananda became stunned in ecstasy as he stared at the beautiful form of Vishvambar. He appeared to be licking that beautiful form with his tongue, drinking it with his eyes, embracing it with his arms, and smelling it with his nose. In this way, Nityananda became stunned. He neither spoke nor did anything. Everyone there was astonished. Lord Gauranga, the life and soul of all, then devised some means of revealing the identity of Nityananda. The Lord indicated that Srivas should recite a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. That was the trick. Understanding the Lord's gesture, Srivas Pandit immediately recited a verse in glorification of Krishna's characteristics. Here's the verse. Wearing a peacock feather, ornamented upon his head, blew karnikara flowers on his ears, and a yellow garment of brilliant as gold, and a Vaijayanti garland, Lord Krishna exhibited his transcendental form as the greatest of dancers as he entered the forest of Vrindavan, beautifying it with the marks of his footprints. He filled the holes of his flute with the nectar of his lips, and the cowherd boys sang his glories. As soon as Nityananda heard this verse, he fell unconscious to the ground. Now, this is a celebrated verse that many Gaudiya Vaishnavas say. This is one of the verses that was recited by Vyasadev's disciples after Shukadeva Goswami left home. Just after his birth, Shukadeva Goswami left home, and Vyasadeva called out, and Shukadeva Goswami didn't respond. All that was heard, the Bhagavatam says, was the sound of his voice echoing from the trees, and he left. So Vyasadeva wanted to bring him back. So a similar trick or ploy was used by having some disciples go into the forest and reciting verses from the Bhagavatam. This is one it was said they recited. Blew karnikara flowers by his ear, his flute pressed to his lips, and so on. big festival entering the Vrindavan forest. So when that verse was recited by Srivas, Nityananda fell on the ground unconscious. As Nityananda lost consciousness in ecstasy, Gauranga instructed Srivas to continue reciting. It gives the Sanskrit. Hearing the verses for some time, he regained his consciousness and began to cry. His madness increased as he heard the continual recitation of verses. He roared so loudly that the sound pierced the universe. He suddenly jumped in the air and fell forcefully to the ground. Everyone thought that his bones were smashed. What to speak of others? Even the Vaishnavas were frightened. They prayed, "Oh, Krishna, please protect him." As the Lord rolled on the ground, his entire body became wet with tears of love. He sighed deeply while looking at the face of Vishvambar. His heart was full of ecstasy, and he repeatedly laughed loudly. One moment he danced, one moment he bowed down, one moment he clapped his hands, one moment he jumped wonderfully with his feet together. Seeing his amazing ecstatic madness of love of Krishna, Gaurachandra and all the Vaishnavas began to cry. His happiness constantly increased. Although they tried to hold him still, they were unable. When all the Vaishnavas failed to hold him still, Vishvambar personally took him in his arms. As soon as Nityananda was taken on Vishvambar's lap, he surrendered his life to the Lord and became motionless. Nityananda surrendered his life to whom it belonged and remained inert in the Lord's lap. Nityananda floated in the waters of Chaitanya's love, just as Lakshmana remained in the lap of Ramachandra. After being hit by the Shakti Shela weapon, Nityananda lost consciousness due to being hit by the arrow of ecstatic love. Holding Nityananda on his lap, Gaurachandra began to cry. The exchange of happiness of the two was similar to what is heard between Ram and Lakshman. There is no comparison to the affection between Gaurachandra and Nityananda other than that which is found between Ram and Lakshman. After some time, Nityananda regained his external consciousness, and all the devotees chanted the name of Hari. When Gadadhar saw Nityananda on the lap of Vishvambar, he was surprised by the reversal of roles. And because Nityananda is 12 years older, he's 32, sitting on the lap of this 18-year-old. And smiled within. The pride of Ananta, who constantly holds Vishvambar, is smashed today while being held in the Lord's lap. Gadadhar knows the glories of Nityananda, and Nityananda knows the mind of Gadadhar. While watching Nityananda, the minds of the devotees became filled with ecstatic bliss. As Nityananda and Gaurachandra gazed at each other, they did not speak a word as tears flowed from their eyes. They were both filled with happiness just on seeing each other. The earth became flooded with their tears. Vishvambar said, "Today is an auspicious day for me, for I have seen devotional service, which is the essence of the four Vedas. Are such shivering, such tears, such loud roaring possible for anyone other than one who is empowered by the Lord? Krishna will never forsake one who even once directly sees such devotional service. I understand that you are the full power of Godhead. Only by worshiping you can a living entity attain devotional service to Krishna. You are able to purify the 14 worlds. Your confidential characteristics are inconceivable and unfathomable. Who is qualified to recognize you? For you are the personified wealth of loving devotion to Lord Krishna. If a person associates with you for even a moment, he will be delivered, even if he has committed millions of sinful activities. I have understood that Krishna will deliver me because he has given me your association. Out of great fortune, I have seen your lotus feet just worshiping you. Just by worshiping you, I will achieve the wealth of love for Krishna. Lord Gauranga was fully absorbed as he incessantly offered prayers to Nityananda. Nityananda and Chaitanya conversed with each other through signals and gestures that were unknown to others. The Lord said, I'm afraid to ask, but from which direction have you come? The greatly overwhelmed Nityananda displayed the mentality of a child. He spoke with the restlessness of a young boy. He understood. This is my Lord who has descended. He folded his hands and humbly spoke. He was embarrassed on hearing the Lord glorify him, so he tactfully clarified the Lord's statements. Nityananda said, I have visited many holy places and seen various sites connected with Lord Krishna. I could only see the place, but I could not see Krishna. Then I inquired from some responsible persons why all the thrones were covered, means like, the altars. I asked them, oh, brothers, where has Krishna gone? They said, Krishna has gone to Godadesh. He returned a few days ago from his visit to Gaya. I heard that in Nadia, there is extensive congregational chanting of a Lord Hari's glories. Someone said, Lord Narayan has taken his birth there. I've also heard that all sinful persons are delivered in Navadvip. Therefore, I being most sinful, have come here. The Lord said, we are all fortunate to have a great devotee like you among us. We consider that today our lives have become successful, for we have seen your flowing tears of love. Murari Gupta smiled and said, you understand each other, but we do not understand anything you are saying. Srivas said, what can we understand of that? It is like Madhava and Shankara worshiping each other. Gadadhar said, oh, Pandit, whatever you have said is correct. I think their characteristics resemble those of Ram and Lakshman. Someone said, these two are just like two cupids. Someone else said, these two are like Krishna and Balaram. Someone said, I don't know so much, but it appears that Lord Shesha is lying on the lap of Krishna. Someone said, they are just like two friends, Krishna and Arjuna, because they are filled with such affection. Someone else said, it seems they are well known to each other. I cannot understand anything. They speak through their gestures. In this way, all the devotees happily discuss the Lord's meeting with Nityananda. Anyone who hears about the meeting between Nityananda and Gaurachandra is freed from material bondage. Nityananda alone serves the Lord as his companion, friend, brother, umbrella, bed, and carrier. He serves the Lord in various ways out of his own sweet will. Only one who is favored by him can be qualified to serve the Lord. Even the greatest Vaishnava and yogi, Lord Mahadev, does not know the limits of his glories. The progress of anyone who blasphemes him without understanding the depth of his characteristics is obstructed, even if he achieved devotional service to Vishnu. My only desire is that Nityananda Ram, who is most dear to Lord Chaitanya, may be the Lord of my life. By his mercy, my mind became attracted to Lord Chaitanya, and by his order, I am writing this glorification of Lord Chaitanya. Just as Raghunath and Yadunath are different names of the same person, I know that Nityananda and Baladev are different only in name. Those who wish to cross the ocean of material existence and drown in the ocean of devotional service should worship Lord Nityananda. Anyone who attentively chants these topics receives, with his associates, benedictions given by Vishwambar. The name of Vishwambar is very rare in this world. That Lord is Sri Chaitanya, the life and soul of all. Accepting Sri Chaitanya and Nityananda Prabhu as my life and soul, I, Vrindavan Das, sing the glories of their lotus feet. How is that for a ride on the wave of ecstasy? The Rupa Goswami, I like this. He's described that the spiritual world is actually an ocean of bhakti rasa. It's just an ocean that has waves. And the waves, the ocean itself is bhakti rasa. And the waves of bhakti rasa rise and they fall, and other waves come and go in other directions. And it's just movements of the waves of bhakti rasa. That's the spiritual world. And that's Vrindavan Das is situated in that ocean of bhakti rasa. And he is ecstatically describing what happened when at each of these sequences. And he is deriving great happiness by describing it. He's deriving great happiness by knowing that he's giving to others the same sense, same opportunity. It has that kind of effect. So chapter 5, Lord Nityananda's Vyasa Puja ceremony and his darshan of the Lord's six-armed form. Six-armed form? You know what that is? Yeah? No? Flute. Ram, bow and arrow. And Lord Chaitanya, danda and water pot, kamandalu. One person showing his identity with six-armed form. He is the same Lord, all three of those features. That's Lord Chaitanya. And then there's Lord Nityananda. All glories to Chaitanya Chandra, who is not different from Lord Murari. That's Krishna. Who is the new lamp of Navadvip, who is like an unparalleled lion in subduing the elephant-like atheists, and who holds a string for counting his own names, Hare Krishna, which he chants. All glories to Vishwambar, the life and soul of all. All glories to the Lord of Nityananda and Gadadhar. All glories to the Lord, who is controlled by his devotees, headed by Advaita. Oh Lord, please distribute your devotional service and deliver the fallen souls. In this way, all the devotees became overwhelmed by discussing topics of Krishna in the association of Nityananda. All the devotees were greatly magnanimous Mahabhagavatas. They roared loudly as they became intoxicated in the mellows of Krishna consciousness. Nityananda Prabhu smiled as he looked around. Tears of love flowed from everyone's eyes. When Mahaprabhu Vishwambar saw this ecstatic scene, he spoke something to Nityananda. Oh, Shripad, Nityananda Gosai, please hear. Where should we hold your Vyasa Puja ceremony? Now, Nityananda is the original spiritual master, so he wants to worship original spiritual master. Vyasa Puja ceremony. Tomorrow is the full moon day when Vyasa is worshipped. So consider and inform us what is to be done. Nityananda understood the Lord's hint and brought Srivas Pandit forward by the hand. Nityananda smiled and said, please hear, O Vishwambar, I will observe Vyasa Puja in the house of this Brahmana. Lord Vishwambar said to Srivas, this is a great responsibility for you. Srivas Pandit replied, O Lord, this is not at all a burden for me. By your mercy, everything is available in my home. Cloth, mung dal, Brahmin threads, ghee, betel, pan, and whatever else is needed are all there. I only have to borrow a book to explain the procedures. I am most fortunate, for tomorrow I will see the Vyasa Puja. Mahaprabhu was greatly pleased by the words of Srivas, and all the Vaishnavas began to chant, Hari, Hari. Vishwambar said, oh, Shripad, Gosai, please listen. With your blessings, we will all go to Srivas Pandit's house. Now they were at the house of Nanda Nandana. Nanda, not Nanda Nandana. Krishna. Whose house were they at? Huh? Nandanacharya. Nandanacharya. Nityananda was pleased with the Lord's words. Taking the Lord's instruction, they all immediately departed as Nityananda and Vishwambar went along with their associates. It appeared that Balaram and Krishna were surrounded by the residents of Gokula. And as soon as they entered the house of Srivas, everyone was filled with ecstatic love for Krishna. The Lord ordered that the main entrance be closed so that no one other than intimate associates could enter. The Lord gave the instruction to begin kirtan. As the sound of that kirtan arose, everyone lost external consciousness. In the ecstatic Adivas kirtan prior to Vyasa Puja, the two lords danced as the devotees surrounding them sang. Chaitanya Nitai are bound by eternal love. They meditated on each other as they danced together. Someone roared loudly, someone cried out, someone fell unconscious, while someone else wept. I am unable to describe the Lord's transformations of love, such as shivering, perspiring, hair standing on end, crying, and falling unconscious in ecstasy. And the two lords danced in their own ecstasy. They sometimes embraced each other and cried. They both tried to catch the other's feet, but they both cleverly avoided being caught. They both rolled on the ground in ecstasy and forgot themselves while absorbed in their own pastimes. They lost all external consciousness, and their cloth scattered, although the Vaishnavas tried to pacify them. They were unable. Pretty wild, huh? Who can hold that personality who holds the three worlds? The two lords thus became intoxicated in the happiness of kirtan. Sri Gaurasundar called out, chant, chant, and his entire body became soaked with tears of ecstasy. After obtaining fulfillment in his long-cherished desire for association of Nityananda, the Lord forgot himself and floated in an ocean of bliss. Vishwambar's dancing was most enchanting as his feet would touch his own head. Can you dance like that? Your feet touch your head? I can't even picture what it looks like. The earth trembled under the feet of Nityananda. Where's your mask? You better get one. Yeah. In the house, they may have some. Ask. The earth trembled under the feet of Nityananda, and all the Vaishnavas thought there was an earthquake. In this way, the two lords danced in ecstasy. Who has the power to describe their jubilation? In order to reveal the glories of Nityananda, Lord Vishwambar became absorbed in the mood of Balaram and sat on the throne. the Lord became intoxicated by the mood of Balaram and repeatedly demanded, bring wine, not, the worldly kind of alcohol, but transcendental, amrita. We say nectar. Don't worry. Sri Gaurasundar said to Nityananda, quickly, give me your plow and club, the ornaments that were carried in the hands of Balaram. Being instructed by the Lord, Nityananda put those items in the hands of Lord Gaurachandra, who accepted them. Some persons saw nothing other than their hands, while others directly saw the plow and the club. Only one who is favored by the Lord can know him. Others, even if they see, they cannot explain. This topic is most confidential and is known only to those few persons who know the glories of Nityananda. After accepting the plow and the club from Nityananda, the Lord was overwhelmed and called for Varuni. That's what, when Balaram came to visit, Krishna and Balaram were in Dwarka. And Balaram was saying to Krishna, residents in Vrindavan are barely able to maintain their lives. Go visit them. Save their lives. They're feeling such separation. But he didn't go. So finally Balaram went. And when Balaram went, he gave his association for some time, etc., etc., etc. And he had rasa dance with a different set of gopis than Krishna's gopis. And he then began drinking this Varuni beverage. And he became mad with intoxicated ecstasy. It's not a material beverage. Everyone was speechless and confused as they looked at each other. After careful consideration, they offered the Lord a pitcher of Ganges water. All the devotees offered water and the Lord drank. It appeared as though Lord Balaram himself was drinking. The devotees on all sides offered prayers and glorification of Balaram as the Lord constantly called out, Nada, Nada, Nada. That's a way of addressing Advaita Acharya. It's like an expression of, a son might say, father or dad or something like that, Papa. So this is Nada, respected elder, Nada. The Lord rolled his head back and forth while calling out, Nada, Nada. But no one understood the actual meaning of the word Nada. Everyone inquired, O Lord, who is this Nada you are calling? The Lord replied, he by whose loud cries I came. Advaita Acharya. This incarnation of mine was induced by Nada, whom you all call Advaita Acharya. Nada has brought me from Vaikuntha, but now he is living free from all cares with Haridas. I have descended to inaugurate the Sankirtan movement, by which I will preach the chanting of the holy name in each and every house. I will not award love of God to those fallen souls who have offended my devotees, because they are proud of their education, wealth, high birth, and knowledge, and austerities. Otherwise, I will give everyone that which persons like Brahma enjoy. On hearing the Lord's statement, all the devotees floated in bliss. After a while, Sri Satchidananda became pacified. The Lord then asked, have I been restless? The devotees replied, not particularly. The Lord lovingly embraced everyone and said, "Please do not ever be offended by my behavior." On hearing the Lord's words, all the devotees smiled. Then Nityananda and Mahaprabhu rolled about on the ground. Nityananda, who is none different than Shesha, could not control his ecstatic mood and became overwhelmed in the mellows of loving devotion. One moment he laughed, one moment he cried, the next moment he was naked. His entire body was filled with the nature of a child. Where was his danda? Where was his water pot? And where were his clothes? Nothing remained with him. The most grave Nityananda became restless, but the Lord personally pacified him. The maddened, lion-like Nityananda was controlled by the iron rod-like words of Lord Chaitanya. He did not care for anything else. That's what avaduta means. That was just, the meaning of avaduta. Now you know the meaning. Be calm tomorrow, because you must worship Vyasadeva. Be calm tomorrow, you must worship Vyasadeva. Speaking in this way, the Lord returned home. All the devotees then returned to their homes, while Nityananda remained in the house of Srivas. In the dead of night, Nityananda suddenly roared loudly and broke his danda and kamandalu. Who can understand the unlimited characteristics of the Supreme Lord? Why did he break his danda and kamandalu? When Ramai Pandit rose early the next morning, he was astonished on seeing the broken danda and kamandalu. Kamandalu means a water pot. He immediately informed Srivas, who told him, "Go and inform the Lord." Being informed by Ramai, the Lord came there and found Nityananda profusely laughing. The Lord picked up the broken danda with his own hands and went to Nityananda to take bath in the Ganges. Accompanied by Srivas and other devotees, the Lord went to the Ganges and put the broken danda in the water. The restless Nityananda did not listen to anyone. That is why the Lord sometimes admonished him. When Nityananda saw a crocodile, he attempted to catch it. Gadadhar and Srinivas exclaimed, "Alas, alas!" He fearlessly swam through the waters of the Ganges, but he was somewhat pacified by Chaitanya's words. Vishwambar called to Nityananda, "Come quickly and celebrate Vyasa Puja." Stop chasing the crocodile. Let's go have Vyasa Puja. Wild. Hearing the Lord's words, Nityananda completed his bath and returned to Srivas's house with the Lord. All the devotees gradually assembled together, and they began to incessantly chant the names of Krishna. Srivas Pandit was appointed the head priest. On Lord Chaitanya's instructions, he completed all the formalities. Everyone chanted so sweetly that the house of Srivas was transformed into Vaikuntha. Srivas Pandit was conversant with all scriptures. He performed all the activities according to scriptural injunctions. He placed an attractive garland of forest flowers in the hands of Nityananda and spoke to him. "Oh, Nityananda, please listen. After reciting the appropriate mantras, offer this garland and your obeisances to Vyasadeva." This is a procedure for in their village custom on their Guru Purnima. You heard of that before? Guru Purnima. That's besides Gora Purnima, there's another full moon that even followers of Lord Chaitanya who observe Gora Purnima, there's a Purnima, a full moon, where Vyasadeva, where all those who are gurus are worshipped. Guru Purnima, once per year on the Vaishnava calendar. So that's the day, and Srivas has given a garland saying it's Vyasa Puja day, and please give this nice garland to Vyasadeva to honor Guru Puja or Guru Purnima. It is the injunction of the scriptures that one should personally offer a garland to Vyasadeva, for if Vyasadeva is pleased, all your desires will be fulfilled. After hearing what Srivas said, Nityananda replied, "Yes, yes." But he did not appear to know which mantras he should recite. He murmured something that no one could understand. And while holding the garland in his hands, he looked around. Thereafter, the magnanimous Srivas informed the Lord, your Shripad is not worshipping Vyas. On hearing Srivas's words, Lord Vishwambar quickly came before Nityananda. The Lord said, "Oh, Nityananda, please hear me. Quickly offer the garland and then worship Vyasadeva." As Nityananda saw Lord Vishwambar standing before him, he offered the garland to him. The garland looked most enchanting upon the curly hair of the Lord. At that time, Vishwambar manifested a six-armed form. On seeing the conch, disc, club, lotus, plow, and mushala. Mushala, that's the plow for plowing the field. Mushala. Nitai was overwhelmed and fell to the ground unconscious. Now, this is a different, so the four-arm form of Vishnu plus Balaram. As soon as Nitai saw the six-armed form, he fell unconscious to the ground with no symptoms of life. All the Vaishnavas became frightened and prayed, "Oh, Krishna, please protect him. Oh, Krishna, please protect him." The son of Jagannath roared loudly and repeatedly slapped his sides. When Nityananda fell unconscious on seeing the six-armed form, Lord Chaitanya personally picked him up with his own hands and said, "Oh, Nityananda, get up and steady your mind. Listen to the congregational chanting that you have begun. The kirtan for which you have incarnated to inaugurate is going on before you. What more do you want? Loving devotional service belongs to you, for you are the personification of ecstatic love. Unless you distribute this devotional service, no one can possess it. Please control yourself and get up. Glance mercifully on your intimate associates and distribute this wealth to whomever you desire. Anyone who manifests the slightest envy of you is never dear to me, even if he worships me." Nitai regained consciousness by the Lord's words. He became filled with ecstasy on seeing the six-armed form. Know for certain that Ananta, in whose heart Gaurachandra resides, is not different from Nityananda. The manifestation of the Lord's six-armed form is not astonishing, for all such manifestations are simply pastimes of its various incarnations. When Lord Ramachandra offered oblations to his father Dasharath, he directly accepted them. If that was wonderful, then this is also. Know for certain that they are all Krishna's sporting pastimes. The natural characteristics of Nityananda Swarup is that he cannot give up the mood of servitorship for even a moment. The natural characteristic of Lakshman is to always serve the beloved Lord of Sita with his mind, his life, and his wealth. In this way, the mind of Nityananda Swarup is always pleased in the service of Sri Chaitanya Chandra. He is the unlimited, independent controller and the cause of universal creation, maintenance, and annihilation. It is stated in the Vedas that at the time of final dissolution, the Lord, in his form of Ananta, remains unaffected. Still, the natural characteristic of Sri Anantadev is to remain constantly attached to the loving service of the Lord. Consider carefully how in every yuga and in every incarnation, it is his natural characteristic to remain the servant of the Lord. In his incarnation as Lakshman, Ananta is the Lord's younger brother and is always engaged in serving the Lord. Although he gave up eating, drinking, and sleeping to constantly serve the lotus feet of Lord Sri Ram, he was still not satiated. Although in his incarnation as Balaram, he was the elder brother, he never gave up the mood of service from his heart. He addresses Krishna as Swami, or Lord. His mind never deviates from devotional service. Know for certain that the Lord, known as Ananta, is not different from Nityananda Prabhu. Therefore, anyone who discriminates between Nityananda and Balaram is certainly a fool. One who disrespects the servitor, personality of Godhead, certainly commits an offense to Lord Vishnu. My dear, this is from Bhagavad Gita. My dear Partha, those who claim to be my devotees are not my devotees. This is Adi Purana. Is everything okay? Those who claim to be this is Krishna to Arjuna. Those who claim to be my devotees are not my devotees, but those who claim to be my devotees of my devotees are actually my devotees. Although Lakshmi is worshipped by Brahma and Shiva, her natural tendency is to serve the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. Lord Shesha is endowed with all energies, yet it is his natural characteristic to serve the Lord. Therefore, the Lord is most satisfied to glorify his characteristics, his devotees' characteristics. It is the natural characteristic of the Supreme Lord to remain controlled by his devotees. The Lord takes special pleasure in glorifying his devotees. Both Vishnu and the Vaishnavas take pleasure in glorifying each other. Therefore, the Vedas describe their spontaneous pastimes. I write the glories of Vishnu and the Vaishnavas according to the evidence given in the Puranas. The thoughts and words of Nityananda Sarup are, Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Lord, and I am one of his eternal servants. Day and night, no words came from his mouth other than, I am his servant, and he is my Lord in all respects. Anyone who glorifies me, along with Lord Chaitanya, is actually my servant and will certainly achieve me. He personally saw the six-armed form of the Lord, and therefore I'm describing these topics for his pleasure. On the spiritual platform, Nityananda always sees the pastimes of Sri Gaurasundara in his heart, and they are certainly both always see each other. Yet, Sri Nityananda served the Lord by acting in accordance with the pastimes of their incarnations. Who can understand his pastimes? The Supreme Lord thus accepts service from himself, as sung about and described in the Vedas, the Mahabharata, and the Puranas. The activities performed by the Supreme Lord are called the Veda. The four Vedas sing of those activities while avoiding all contradictions. Without engaging in devotional service, no one can understand this. This is known to a few people by the mercy of Gaurchandra. The Vaishnavas are eternally pure and full of knowledge. Their quarreling is simply a part of their pastimes. Our quarreling is a little different, but their quarreling is pastimes. If someone who has lost his intelligence does not understand this, worships one and criticizes the other, he'll be ruined. Just as a foolish person who worships the feet of a Brahmana and then beats him on the head goes to hell. One who worships the deity form of Vishnu and then disrespects that same Lord who is situated in the hearts of all living entities also goes to hell. What to speak of being envious of Vaishnavas if one causes pain to ordinary living entities? He is considered a fallen low-class person. Even after worshiping Lord Vishnu, if a person gives trouble to other living entities, his worship becomes fruitless. Such a person suffers unlimited miseries. The worship of persons who do not know that Lord Vishnu is present within the heart of every living entity is certainly materialistic. Their worship is like someone who washes the feet of a Brahmana with one hand and beats him on the head with the other hand. Consider carefully. Have such persons ever benefited, or will they ever be benefited? It is 100 times more sinful to blaspheme a Vaishnava than to be envious of ordinary living entities. Those who faithfully worship the deity form of the Lord but do not respect his devotees. Those who do not show compassion to those who are foolish, wretched, and fallen. Those who worship one incarnation of the Lord and do not worship other incarnations. Those who discriminate between Krishna and Lord Ramachandra, and those who have no love for Balaram and Shiva are, according to scriptures, the lowest of all devotees. A devotee who faithfully engages in the worship of the deity in the temple, but does not behave properly towards other devotees or people in general, is called a prakrita bhakta, a materialistic devotee. and is considered to be in the lowest position. Now comes summary. In the course of these topics, I have described the symptoms of the lowest devotees. Thus, Nityananda became filled with bliss upon seeing the six-armed form of the Lord. One who hears this narration of Nityananda seeing the six-armed form of the Lord is freed from material bondage. After regaining external consciousness, Nityananda began to cry. It appeared that a great river was flowing from his two lotus eyes. Thereafter, Mahaprabhu instructed everyone, now that the Vyasa Puja ceremony is completed, begin kirtan. On receiving the Lord's orders, everyone became jubilant. Suddenly, the sound of Krishna's names vibrated in all directions. As Nityananda and Gaurachandra danced together, the two brothers became fully intoxicated and forgot themselves. As the Vaishnavas became overwhelmed in ecstasy, in this way, the ceremony of Vyasa Puja was joyfully performed. Some danced, some sang, some rolled on the ground. Some devotees tried to catch hold of others' feet. The mother of Lord Chaitanya is the mother of the universe. She watched the entire incident from a solitary place. Whenever Mother Sachi saw Lord Vishwambar and Nityananda, she considered, these two are my sons. The Vyasa Puja ceremony was the most blessed event. Only Lord Ananta is capable of describing it. And the last page. I'm only trying to describe some of Lord Chaitanya's characteristics in the form of codes for what is befitted by glorifying Krishna in this way. The entire day was passed in the happiness of the Vyasa Puja ceremony as all the devotees danced in the association of Vishwambar. All the exalted devotees became intoxicated with ecstasy and cried while exclaiming, "Oh, Krishna!" After revealing the truth of his own devotional service in this way, Vishwambar and his associates became peaceful. Vishwambar said to Srivas Pandit, now bring the remnants of foods offered to Vyasadeva. Srivas Pandit then immediately brought all the foodstuffs before the Lord, who served everyone those remnants with his own hands. Being served by the hands of the Lord, all the exalted devotees happily honored those remnants. The Lord called everyone who was inside the house and personally gave them prasad. Those servants and maidservants of the Vaishnavas thus received that which the demigods headed by Brahma feel fortunate to obtain. All these wonderful pastimes took place at the house of Srivas. Therefore, who can describe Srivas's good fortune? In this way, various pastimes were regularly performed in Navadvip, but the people were not aware of them. Accepting Sri Chaitanya and Nityananda Prabhu as my life and soul, I, Vrindavan Das, sing the glories of their lotus feet. Now, if Prematrangani, if you're listening to this class, could you send the commentary on texts 46 through 48, 146, 148, where it specifically speaks of Lord Shiva, those who have no love for Balaram and Shiva, like how to understand that, because I think it's going to be a question. I have that question. I'm sure there's some explanation. Now, one explanation could easily be Sadashiva. You know who is Sadashiva? Sadashiva is the form of Shiva that's fully Vishnu Tattva in the Vaikuntha realm. And the other Shivas are expansions of him, or expansions from through Lord Brahma, but expansions of that original Sadashiva. It's complicated. In the chapter in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, that describes who is Advaitacharya, one of the names of Advaitacharya is Sadashiva. Now we know Advaitacharya is Mahavishnu, right? Right? Yes. So thinking of the Panchatattva, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita. So Krishna himself, his first expansion, Balaram, and then Advaita is Mahavishnu. All Vishnu Tattva, but in that category of expansion. Read the chapter carefully, and you'll find that one of the names given, just like here, is Nada. It's just a colloquial expression of an exalted elder or superior, Nada. But he is Sadashiva. And Sadashiva is, and specifically it's mentioned, is in the Vaikuntha realm. Now the
Only one.
You're clever. There's a Sadashiva in Vaikuntha, and he's one. But that Sadashiva can have expansions, and so the expansions can also be called Sadashiva. But the conventional use of Sadashiva is, a full Vishnu Tattva form in Vaikuntha. So to go through what Shiva Tattva is a little complicated. Keeping it simple, something that's complicated, simple, it's not easy, but there are at least 5 or 6 different manifestations of Shiva in different realms, because he has different functions. In Gaudiya Vaishnav, I don't want to go into it because it's too complicated, but in Gaudiya Vaishnav teachings, Shiva Tattva and Guru Tattva are most difficult because they're very involved. So perhaps this is speaking of Lord Shiva in that way. Or to get a little more tricky, we know that there's 10 offenses in the chanting of the holy name. You're familiar with that there's 10 offenses. And one of those 10 offenses, that the way we recite it is, it's an offense to consider the names of various demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of Lord Vishnu. Correct? Equal to or independent of. Those who are Sanskrit scholars have pointed out to me that there's a more direct meaning is to consider the names of Lord Shiva to be independent of the name of, not independent of, but the name of Lord Vishnu. They're respectful, they're there to be respected the same. That's another rendering of the Sanskrit, a very direct meaning of the Sanskrit. So I don't want to get too far off track, but something, because I spent about 3 to 4 months going through pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan, 10th canto chapters of Krishna in Vrindavan. And we find that Krishna and the Brijbasis, they worship various devas and devis, correct? Like the gopis, they worship Katyayani. Katyayani is one of the names of Durga. Katyayani is one of the names of Durga, who is a demigoddess of this world. But we also find that the Katyayani that the gopis were worshiping was the internal potency Katyayani. That is to say, the demigods and demigoddesses, they're expansions or counterparts of the spiritual world. They're reflections of what's existing in the spiritual world. You with me? There's the tree at the opposite shore of a pond, and the reflection in the pond, the roots are growing up and the branches are growing down because it's just a reflection. The actual tree, the roots are growing down and the branches are growing up. But in the reflection, it's the other way around. So This world is a reflection of the spiritual world. The demigods and demigoddesses have their spiritual counterparts. So the Katyayani that the gopis were worshiping was actually the internal potency Yogamaya, because only through Yogamaya Krishna can become one's husband. Then there's another pastime where the cowherd community went to observe Shivaratri. Now, Prabhupada explains it in Krishna book this way. They weren't worshiping Lord Shiva in the way that persons of this world worship Lord Shiva to get something. Demigods are worshipped because they deliver things. It's in Bhagavad Gita, and it's common. People worship demigods because they get anta palat. They get something that's limited and temporary from the demigods. That's what's there in the Vedic text, the Karmakanda text. You worship this deva, you get this thing. You worship that devi, you get that thing. So it's for fulfillment of material desires. Demigod worship commonly is for that purpose. So that the Vaishnavas, the Brijbasis, they went on Shivaratri. They went on the occasion of Shivaratri to some temple of Lord Shiva in Uma to do Shivaratri for 3 days. Big Shivaratri festival. Now, one explanation that Prabhupada gives in Krishna book is they went there not like materialists that worship Lord Shiva to get something, because they had no material desire. They have not desire to get something. So Prabhupada writes in Krishna book, they went out of curiosity. And the second reason he gives is they went to have fun, because that's what Brijbasis do. They do things for fun. And another explanation is they were worshiping Sadashiva. They're worshiping the spiritual counterpart of the material demigod. So the material demigod, Lord Shiva, one of his functions, and he has abodes to suitable for that, is in Mount Kailash, and he fulfills people's desires. Like Ravana, he had a desire, and Lord Shiva gave him some benedictions and so forth. So it's not possible. I would like to see how Bhaktisiddhanta handles this particular statement of Vrindavan Das. Those that see the name of Balaram and Lord Shiva distinct from one another, that they have some wrong understanding. I'd like to see what he has to say about that, because there are different ways of understanding. For sure, Vaishnava means Vishnu is supreme, and there isn't a second supreme. There are different forms of Vishnu. So if there's a form that's non-different than Vishnu, and it starts with an S, and it sounds like Shiva, it's Sadashiva. It's got to mean that, minimally, because Vaishnavas worship. Vaishnavas don't worship devas and devis for material benedictions. Okay, that was a little confusion at the end, but as I read it, I was like, I would like to understand this better. See if there's any comments or questions or any thoughts on all of this. Yes.
Shambhu are one and the same, or they're different?
The different names are for different functions.
But personality is same.
Well, I could say yes and no. Personality is the same, yes, but one is in a Vishnu Tattva category and the other is a Shiva Tattva category. So no.
So which one is Vishnu and which one is Shiva?
Sadashiva is Vishnu, and Shambhu is Shiva Tattva. It goes like this. I mean, there may be further explanations to what I'm about to say, but in the process of creation, the glance of Mahavishnu that contacts Pradhan, the glance of Mahavishnu that contacts Pradhan is Shambhu. Shambhu is the original impregnation or the original act of procreation. That's milk in touch with the souring agent that becomes yogurt or dahi. Correct?
Okay.
So he's dahi. He's not milk. Okay? Shambhu.
Yeah.
The glance.
The glance.
Contacts Pradhan, or because Vishnu doesn't contact. His glance contacts. And his glance is Shambhu. It's the same as but different from. As milk and dahi are the same thing, but they're just milk, but they're not the same. Okay. Anything else? Yes.
Thanks, Maharaj. Just want to know where this 10 offenses to the holy name are mentioned. Which Shastra it is
Padma
mentioned?
Purana.
Padma Purana?
Padma Purana.
Thank you.
You can get the Sanskrit, and there's different translations of the Sanskrit.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, Sadashiv is Vishnu Tattva. And so can we say that is expansion of Lord Vishnu?
He's an expansion of Balaram.
His expansion of Lord Balaram?
Yeah. So, you know how that sequence goes, right? There's Krishna's first expansion is Balaram. And from Balaram comes Sankarshan. And from Sankarshan, the Chatur Vyuha. And then the Sankarshan expands into Narayana of Vaikuntha. And Narayana of Vaikuntha expands as the second Chatur Vyuha. You're familiar with this sequence, right? And then the second Sankarshan expands as the Purusha avatars. The Purusha avatars have functions in this world. So now Sadashiva, is he an expansion of Vishnu? No. He's Sadashiva is in the Vaikuntha realm, who's, you can say in that sequence, he's an expansion of the Sankarshan of the spiritual realm, as are all the forms of Narayan, because he's in that category. Sadashiva in the Vaikuntha realm, expansion of Sankarshan.
Guru Maharaj, Hare
Yeah,
Krishna.
you have the mic, go ahead.
The picture is there, Maharaj. Can show. The Sadashiv Lok is near. The Shambhu and all will be down.
Okay, good, thank you.
Maharaj, Radharani and Krishna are same.
Yeah.
Like they are one.
Yes,
There's no expansion of Krishna to Radharani. It is
No.
they are
one entity.
one entity.
Yes. As sun and sunshine are one entity, the teaching of Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is a verse by Swarup Damodar, it says, Radha and Krishna are one entity, eternally manifest in two forms. You familiar with that verse? Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikritir Ladini Shakti Asmat Ekatmanav Eka Atma Puri Deha Beda, two forms, eternally manifest, one entity, eternally manifest in two forms, Radha Krishna.
Maharaj, where is this verse?
Chaitanya Charitamrita, first few verses of Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila. Radha starts, Radha Krishna Pranaya. You'll find it that way. Radha and Krishna are one entity, Eka Atma. Atma in that sense means the Lord, not just the Jiva. Eka Atma, one entity. Ladini and the possessor of Ladini Shakti. One entity. Sun and sunshine. One entity.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay. Yes. Well, here comes the microphone.
So, Hare Krishna Maharaj. So, Maharaj, was Vrindavan formed by Lord Krishna because he was coming to the earth, or was it already there?
Is your question, the Vrindavan on earth, was it manifest by Krishna? Was it already there? That's your question? It's eternally existing. It's not, it's, when the spiritual, Prabhupada gives this explanation, that just like a country has embassies, and from the legal point of view, the embassy of a country is the country, correct? From a legal point of view. From a spiritual point of view, the abode of Vrindavan in this earthly realm is like an embassy, but it's not created for the practical purposes of Krishna's pastimes. It's an eternal embassy, or a micro manifestation of the macro eternally. But within that micro is everything. Everything. The fullness of Goloka Vrindavan is in Boma Vrindavan. And it's not, so it may be manifest to the external world for people to see or not, according to Krishna's desire, just like its form can be manifest or not. But that abode isn't created, and it's a time of annihilation of the whole cosmic universe. It's not destroyed. It's eternally existing. Eternally existing.
So, Maharaj, when the Lord comes,
Go ahead.
okay, so we hear that he always come with his subordinates, the people like who can play a role, different roles in his pastimes.
Yes.
So the Lord never comes alone. So there are his devotees, who already come to the earth before even he arrives, and then once he comes down, then they play different roles, and with the time, some go back. So in Vrindavan, so everybody who played pastime with Lord Krishna, can we assume that they all came as part of Krishna's plan, and there was not anybody else in Vrindavan who was not eligible to play pastime with Lord Krishna?
Well, the non-devotees were able to enter Vrindavan, demons, etc. They were able to enter Vrindavan. They were able to enter Vrindavan. And they did take part in Krishna's pastimes, but that's his mercy to enable persons that aren't qualified to see him and to participate in his pastimes in different ways. Let's take this for an example, not just demons. The pastime when Krishna was approached by the cowherd boys and they said they were hungry, although they had their own bunches, they were hungry. So Krishna sent them to the place where the Brahmanas were performing a yajna. Using my name, say Krishna's hungry and ask for something. Right? And they didn't. Even they was asked in Krishna's name. So were they devotees or not devotees? going back to your question, were those brahmanas devotees or not devotees? They weren't of the caliber of the Brijbasis. They weren't like 0, but they weren't 10 either. Then Krishna made them eligible by his pastimes. Does that answer your question? So there's such people, even during Krishna's pastimes.
So can we say that anyone who ever had a desire to meet Krishna or be part with him, they all took birth in the Vrindavan to
Well,
play?
no. The persons may have a desire, but not receive that same good fortune that for example, the brahmanas that didn't offer something to Krishna when he asked or was asked on his behalf. But there may be other persons that didn't have that good fortune. There are persons that had that good fortune.
So all the either devotees or non-devotees who were seeing Krishna every day,
Fortunate.
and they were able to talk to him in some or one way.
Yeah, our acharyas say in order to see whether one's a devotee or not a devotee, to see Krishna is the result of Krishna's revealing himself to that individual. And when Krishna performs his worldly pastimes, it's by his mercy that even not so qualified persons can see him. And the qualified persons can see him. And the qualified persons can more than see him. They interact with him according to their rasa. And not qualified persons don't interact with him according to their rasa, but they still see him because that's his mercy when he performs his pastimes. And then when he withdraws his pastimes, they don't see him, even the qualified ones, unless they see Krishna and his pastimes within their heart. That's something that's described, by the way, by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Put your mask back on, please. By Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Krishna Samhita, that's one of his books. Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains, somewhere, Krishna's pastimes are eternal. So somewhere there's someone who's seeing Krishna fighting with Chanura and Balaram fighting with Mushtaka. Somewhere Krishna is lifting Govardhan in someone's heart. So that's one way that Krishna can manifest himself within the hearts of his devotees. But there's another way, that's where everyone, unqualified, can see. That's a very special manifestation. That's where your question is, when he makes his pastimes manifest, his eternal associates are there. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Maharaj, you also just shared that there is no difference between Srimati Radharani and Krishna.
That your wife understands that one now. Yeah.
So in Lord Ramchandra's pastime, we saw that that Mata Sita was incarnation of Lakshmi Devi,
Yes.
and Lord Rama was incarnation of Lord Vishnu. So they are like counterpart, in the spiritual world. So in the material world also, they were, all the arrangements were made.
Same as with Krishna.
Like for them to, get together, even
Same.
though. Okay. So even though there were troubles in Ramchandra's life
pastime.
also.
That's pastimes. That's what we just read, and that's our understanding. That which looks like a difficulty is an ecstasy. Mm-hmm. And what we just read is sometimes there was, tussle or like dispute, but it's pastime. There's no worldly kind of dispute. It's a transcendental exchange of love.
Mm-hmm. So in that term, Maharaj, why did Krishna had let Srimati Radharani go through the separation, the pain, which didn't happen in their life?
Why?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand that if they are counterpart in the spiritual world,
Well,
then
here's what.
why there is a separation in the material
Why did it
world?
happen with Ram and Sita? Here's what Hanuman says. It's right in Bhagavatam. You can look it up later. Canto 5, chapter 19, Hanuman speaks and says in 2 verses, there's absolutely no question of Sita being separated from Ram. It's not possible. She's his eternal associate. It's not possible. It's an appearance through pastime. And the purpose of the pastime is love and separation. But it's a pastime. Same with Sita, same with Radha and Krishna. No, she was experiencing separation. And to us, that looked horrible. But it's directly in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that those feelings are ecstasies. To us, it looked horrible. And their expressions are, oh, horrible. And their feeling is a type of ecstasy. It's a spike in their primary rasa. The primary rasas are 5. And there's secondary rasas that mix with the primary rasas and seem to cover the primary rasas. And this is one of them. This feeling of separation is a secondary rasa that strengthens and enhances the primary rasa. Now, from our worldly perspective, we don't get it because it just looks like awful. But it's an ecstasy. That's a science of rasa that Rupa Goswami explains in detail. And it's not easy to understand the science of it, but it's an ecstasy. Because there's no question of separation, like Hanuman said about Sita and Ram. Anyone who thinks like that doesn't understand. It's not possible. They're eternally connected, eternally associated. So what's the deal? I mean, Sita was kidnapped, right? Lord Chaitanya said to the Brahmana who was fasting, this is in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, a Brahmana is fasting till death because Sita was kidnapped by Ravan. How can I maintain my life? Lord Chaitanya said, she wasn't kidnapped. It's not possible that a demon like Ravan could even touch the shadow of Sita. Not possible. Please trust me. Break your fast. So then Lord Chaitanya continued his travels and he went to some temple in South India. He found the Kurma Purana that says it. He brought a copy back to the Brahmana. Big, you look on a map, it's like weeks of travel to go back and forth. And he brought the book and he showed the book. It was a Maya Sita that was taken. That's in Kurma Purana. There's different versions of that pastime. That's what Kurma Purana says. So where was Sita when the Maya Sita was taken? That Kurma Purana says, there's different versions. Agni knew that was going to happen. One version says Agni knew, so Agni switched real Sita and gave Maya Sita. And that's what Ravana took. So the real Sita was with Agni for safekeeping, and then she was restored to Ram when she entered fire. And there's different versions of how, but they're eternal associates. The principle is, however the Leela is rendered, it's a pastime for enhancing the primary rasa. There's meeting and separation in any relationship. Meeting and separation. Not only separation or only meeting. It's both. And anyway, it's the science of rasa. Even when there's meeting, there's the sense, oh, soon we may be separated. And when they're separated, I'm anticipating meeting. It nourishes the rasa. It nourishes it's called sthāyi bhava. Steady ecstasy. And there's embellishments, and that's what prema is. It takes a while. Read carefully, Nectar of Devotion, you'll start to understand a little better. Yes, all the way in the back again. We have something online?
Yes, there is a question from Nanda Prabhu.
Maharaj, like neophyte devotees like me, like we are always, surrounded by anarthas, lust, anger, greed, and madness, and all kind of,
etc. Yeah.
And when sometimes there are classes that are that pinpoint the anarthas like envy, anger,
yes,
so that really helps, nice. And sometimes there are stories like of leelas when we hear, like when I hear Gopi Geet and pastimes, it seems like they are too high for my mind. So how can how can one see that those stories, like how can those stories helps us in getting rid of our anarthas and move us, push us forward? I want to understand that.
There's many things to say in response to what you just said, but I'll try to keep it simple. And there's a theme, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that when Krishna appears in this world, he performs eternal pastimes, and English translation is occasional pastimes, or Nitya Lila and Nimitta Lila, or Naimittak Lila, occasional pastimes, such as killing of demons, or such as Krishna's taking birth. Because in the spiritual world, there's no demons and there's no birth, etc. So there's pastimes of this world that are not as, part of his Nitya Lila. They're occasional pastimes. And he explains the purpose of the killing of demons is for the strengthening of the shelter taking of his eternal associates. There's a spike in their dependence upon Krishna. Oh, Krishna, help, here comes Aristasura. And then there's another benefit that is for people like you and me, where there's some anarthas. And it helps, Krishna performs this pastime because it helps us be protected by Krishna through the pastime and hearing the pastime, although we're not seeing the pastime, we're not, present when Krishna was present, but we're hearing the pastime, and it's mitigating that anartha tendency in our heart. And then he identifies each of the demons killed by Krishna, which of the anarthas is being addressed by Krishna in that particular demon killing. Or like with, it's not only with demons, like Krishna subduing the pride of Indra, the Govardhan Lila. It's for Indra's benefit, but it's also for our benefit, as you're indicating, hearing about them. Just hearing the pastime has spiritual benefit to help you and me become free from those anarthas and be protected, feel protected and be protected by Krishna from our own anarthas. Now, the positive side is your mind goes to Krishna, and the eradication of the negative side is the anartha is diminished and eventually fully purified. There's potencies in those pastimes that have that function or purpose, as much as for the others, stimulating the shelter taking of the devotees. Oh, Ristasara, Krishna help. Like that. Strengthening their, enhancing, nourishing their primary rasa by the secondary rasa, danger and shelter taking, because Krishna is our shelter. Now, part of your question was Gopi Geet, and there's a purpose there, and that's described. It's not easy to understand, but the purpose there is lust. And there's a potency in Krishna's pastime of his exchanges with the gopis that curbs mundane lust. There's a potency in those pastimes for that, and to bring us, if our eternal relationship with Krishna is his eternal maid servants, it nourishes that, while it takes away the mundane lust, or the mundane envy, or the mundane greed, or the mundane, stubbornness, or mundane contaminations of heart, through those various pastimes in Braj specifically. It's described, the two books where it's described is Krishna Samhita by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And that's where the most of it is. So you can, at some point in time, as you progress in spiritual path and you're reading Krishna's pastimes more and more, you want to understand that topic. That's the go-to place. Krishna Samhita. It's translated into English. And it's a nice topic that I've given seminars on all of those. The Krishna's killing of demons in Vrindavan. And, it's nice to tell the pastime and then explain it. I'm doing that with the Chinese devotees. You know more about Krishna's pastimes than they do. And, we're doing the same thing. And how much they understand, it may be, a 1 or 1.5 out of 10. But the potency is there nonetheless. Just hearing the pastime and the description. Okay, let's go online. Microphone up front.
Amritananda Prabhu, you can go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my respectful obeisance, all Krishna Prabhupada. Maharaj, I have a catch-22 kind of a situation. These past few days, you've been sharing your realizations and clarifications. So it's something like, Maharaj, we hear so much about Krishna Katha, the philosophy and so forth, and it kind of becomes like a balanced or a calm. There is a level of satisfaction. And then when Vaishnavas come and they share their realization, it's like throwing a stone. And then there are those ripples which go outside. And then the explanations, it touches upon so many other aspects, not just for that specific question which was clarified, whether you're reading the Bhagavad Gita or something or so on and so forth. So more questions come up, Maharaj. In these past few days, for example, you very nicely explained that inquisitiveness is part of spiritual spiritual dynamics. And that's how the appreciation for Krishna, the awe, the reverence, his majesty, so many aspects it reaches out into, Maharaj. So the question which is coming up is related to, and also you said that logic is impermanent and insufficient. Krishna Tattva and Krishna Leela both are intertwined. And it is his causeless mercy, Krishna's causeless mercy. So what I was thinking this morning during Japa is that ours is service department, Krishna's is mercy department. So it's something like a relay we are running, and then we pass on that baton to Krishna and Krishna's mercy, rather. That's how I was thinking of it. And it's causeless, but at the same time, it is, we need to do stuff like purify ourselves to become qualified for mercy. So if mercy is causeless, how is it that I need to do qualifications to get mercy? And the second question, Maharaj, is at what point do I stop asking questions?
And the soul doesn't die, so you don't stop asking. When you become brain dead, you can stop asking questions. Oh, we got the microphone here. So the inquisitive spirit is a sign of life. You become a stone, and then you stop asking questions. So you'll perpetually be asking questions. Look forward to it. It's wonderful. And so the other question is, how do we become eligible for mercy? And while mercy is causeless, which you pointed out, just like the sun shines everywhere, it's certainly possible for one to hide under a rock and not be exposed to the sunshine. And so it's a free will choice. What if we want mercy? We'll extend ourselves in such a way that mercy is available. We're dependent, even if we're extending ourselves or endeavoring or something, trying, aspiring, hankering, striving, as you say, questioning. That's something that we do on our side, and the eligibility is the willingness to achieve that, to achieve that spiritual connection with Krishna. Are we having a...
Sorry, Maharaj, there's no audio, can't hear you, Maharaj. Could you repeat it, please?
Yes, hold it, okay. Yeah, that's a good idea. So eligibility grows. It's not static, but it's ecstatic. So eligibility can grow as your enthusiasm or eagerness grows. We know this from Rupa Goswami's teachings. The eligibility of a candidate for devotional service is to want it. Or the further eligibility is one's eagerness or taking it to extreme greed to get mercy. So there's degrees of awakened states of consciousness, but wanting to know, wanting to be in your relationship with Krishna, wanting to receive mercy. It's not static, it's dynamic. Eligibility is that wanting, and a big part of wanting comes from association. So stay always in the association of those who are in the wanting category or the connected category. Eligibility. Okay. Online, anything else?
Yeah, there's another question from Surabhi.
This is from China. Oh, local.
From here.
Okay.
She asked a question and the youth thing too. What is the difference between Shiva Tattva and Mahatattva?
Mahatattva is Prakriti, and Shiva Tattva is conscious energy, conscious personality. Mahatattva is Prakriti. It's just a state or one of the descriptions of the stages of Prakriti, material nature, which is not conscious.
Okay. And another question from Shrida Das. Guru Maharaj, because all the expansions comes from Lord Balaram, then can we say that both Lord Ramachandra and Lakshman are his expansions?
Lakshman and who else?
Lord Ramachandra.
Not Ramachandra. Ramachandra is an expansion of Vasudeva. But Lakshman is. Yeah. Okay. You have something. Go ahead. Give that man a microphone.
I know this might be a random question.
Random question.
Yeah, but
It's okay.
related to Krishna consciousness.
Good. I'm ready.
How do the other Maharajas tell the Chinese people about Krishna, even though they don't know the language Chinese?
We have translators.
And there's no word of God in China. So how do they explain Krishna?
The Chinese translators have struggled with appropriate language to communicate the message of Krishna, because language is simply symbols.
Okay.
Like we say table. The word table is just a symbol of the object. And in Chinese, they'll call it something other than table, but it's a symbol to indicate the object. So they in the Chinese language, they don't have concepts that match Vedic concepts. So it's pretty hard to, it's challenging for the translators to come up with language that matches the object the topic that's being discussed in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and the process of devotional service, etc. So the challenge is in the hand of the translators, but they do a pretty good job because the devotees, the Chinese devotees, they become really, really fantastic devotees. So exactly what their understanding is, I can't say because I don't speak Chinese, but it's close enough. And the close enough part is that Krishna understands their heart and Krishna connects with their heart. So if they need refinement in concept, then Krishna does that from within his heart, from within their heart. But they get the idea, the basic idea, just like, you and me. We're not Sanskrit scholars, are we? But we get a basic idea, and Krishna recognizes our submission to him and our devotion to him. That's how it works.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything? No?
Haribol.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Jai.